In the last week of June 1914, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Franz Ferdinand, and his wife Sophie were murdered on the streets of Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. Now, this event in itself need not have touched off the Great War, but it did. The period between the assassination and the Austrian ultimatum, the Austrian mobilization, the Russian mobilization, the kicking into force of the Schlieffen Plan is referred to by historians as the July Crisis. In retrospect, we can see all sorts of ways that the assassination did not need to lead to war. I suggest that in your readings, in Strachan, from the primary documents in Mombauer, watching the BBC documentary, the third part of the BBC documentary, 37 Days, you'll get a very clear sense of the steps that were going on and what was happening. I do caution you when you watch 37 Days, Sir Max Hastings, one of the major protagonists in the Origins debate, the author of Catastrophe, has written and has said publicly that 37 Days, there is something in 37 Days to upset everyone. And I think he's absolutely right. No matter what school or side you are on in this debate, you're going to find something that you dislike. What I like about it, and part of the danger of it, is about 37 Days, it's this absolute power of its recreation, because we are programmed, especially in 21st century America, when we see something on the screen, well engineered, with beautiful costumes, well done, that it just seems true to us. Please understand, this is just an idea. For me, one of the great questions is why Franz Ferdinand and Sophie were even in Sarajevo. You have to understand, Franz Ferdinand was the nephew of the octogenarian Emperor Franz Joseph. Franz Joseph had come to the throne in 1848. He was the only monarch most people in the Austrian Empire had ever known. Now, Franz Joseph's only son, Rudolf, had tragically committed suicide in a scandal that we don't know the bottom of, even to this day. We do know that Franz Joseph barely tolerated his nephew, Franz Ferdinand. Franz Ferdinand was ebullient, he was outgoing, he was dynamic. He was a German nationalist. And he particularly disliked the Hungarian, the Magyar elite that shared power within the dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary. So he wasn't well loved. He also committed the social faux pas of marrying a Czech countess. Now, there was not a problem with the fact that his wife Sophie was a Czech. There was a problem, she was a countess. And with it, there is a Habsburg family law that for someone within the family to marry, they must receive the blessing of the head of the family. Namely, in Franz Ferdinand's case, this would have been Franz Joseph. Well, for Franz Joseph's purposes, Sophie was too low. The Habsburgs married the daughters of emperors, of monarchs, of kings and queens, of monarchs, maybe a duchess, never a countess. Franz Ferdinand was smitten. He insisted. They argued. It was only after Franz Ferdinand threatened suicide that Franz Joseph relented and allowed him to marry his princess, his countess. Sophie was made a duchess, but it was clear at the imperial court that she was always at the end of the line. She was not given full honor as a future reigning empress. In fact, Franz Ferdinand had to sign an agreement that it would be a morganatic marriage, that his children by Sophie could not inherit the throne. So there's all that social background. Place that personal problem on the burner. In 1914, the Austrian Imperial General Staff decided to hold war games in Bosnia as a sign to the Serb nationalists in Bosnia and a sign to the Serb monarchy that Austria was prepared to defend Bosnia, which she had recently annexed illegally in 1910. Part of the tradition of the war games is that somebody of importance has to come and officiate. Franz Joseph, now old and unwilling, having a cold, decided he couldn't do it. The Austrian Imperial General Staff asked the heir to the throne to come and observe the games, and then they sweetened the deal. They said, Your Imperial Highness, why don't, after the games, Sophie comes to meet you at Sarajevo, we'll have a formal dinner, we will accord her full honors, you can then go to the Dalmatian coast, the kids, you can have a holiday, this will be great. Franz Ferdinand was more than willing to do this because his wife would be accepted as a full member of the imperial family doing this on this occasion. You know from your reading what happened. Now, the problem when word of the assassination in Sarajevo reached Vienna, the great problem is, of course, what to do. Franz Joseph didn't like his nephew. He could barely stand to be with him. Their weekly audiences were an enormous difficulty for the emperor. The Austrian military and foreign ministry wanted to demonstrate to Serbia the seriousness of this situation and essentially make them grovel. The Hungarian government had to be persuaded because in the dual monarchy, the Hungarians exercised a veto. The Hungarians did not want to go to war where they felt their interests weren't at stake, particularly for this man who they hated. The Austrians only decide to press the issue when, at the beginning of July, the German emperor, the German foreign minister, the German prime minister, the German general staff agreed that this was the time to push Serbia. The world then is in many ways set on the road to war because the Austrians, the Austrian military and the Austrian foreign ministry decided this was the time to teach the Serbs a lesson. The Russians, for their reasons, felt they had to back up the Serbs. Do your reading. Who was responsible? Was there a way out? Did the July crisis have to work out the way the July crisis in fact worked out? I'll look forward to reading what you have to say. Thank you.